Happy Tuesday, diary listeners. I'm here and I'm very excited to have the first part of my time with Jake Meeks of Fireside Tattoo Network. And based on what we talked about in this first piece of his diary entry, I am calling this, How Well Can You Drive? And you'll see why. Enjoy, listeners. Welcome to the Apprenticeship Diaries, where raw meets refined.
Let's be real, we're still working on refining.
What it took, what it takes, and the stories that are made.
Join us as we learn from professionals about how their stories began.
It's your story, so it should be really easy.
Right. Exactly. And we're both used to talking on the microphones, so we shouldn't have any trouble.
Oh yeah. I mean, hopefully. My podcast is very raw.
Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Too, I think.
I'm here today with Jake Meeks. I wanted to introduce you because this is audio only. So, Jake Meeks of Fireside Tattoo Network. Hello.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me.
Of course. I'm very excited because we met on the back end and I was like, hey, have you told your background, your learning journey on your podcast? And I'm shocked that you haven't.
I don't think I have. No, I mean, bits and pieces, but I've never just gone through, I've never made episodes about myself. They've always been about my guests, so I share my experiences, but usually in relationship to someone else's story,
Yeah. No, that's great. I'm excited because now I get the scoop.
Yeah, right.
How long have you been tattooing, my friend?
Oh, I started in May of 1996. So it was 28 years this past May.
Wow.
Time flies.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah.
What was the landscape then? Like, just as a paint a picture kind of deal.
Yeah, not similar at all to this. It was exactly what you kind of always, what you hear of tattooing in the old days. Where I started was a full-on biker shop, a lot of, I don't know, hard people, drug use, a lot of drinking in the shop, a lot of snakes. You walked into the front, you walked into the lobby and it was just like aquariums full of snakes and lizards that people were constantly like getting out and just holding in the, like in the lobby. It's like, is the health department cool with this? Can we do this? Yeah, it was a different, different time all together. There were I didn't know anyone who could draw. That's really one of the reasons I thought if I got into it, I was like, oh, I'll kick ass at this because I can draw better than all these people. But it turned out not to be the case at all. But that was my naive mindset, getting my first tattoo and seeing the people that were working and doing tattoos, using flash and even like poorly tattooing flash, like destroying decent flash. And I remember thinking like I was, 18, 19 years old getting my first tattoo. And I thought, oh man, I would run this show if you give me 6 months to learn how to run that tattoo machine. Like I could do this, but then you get into it, and of course there were great artists. Guy Aitchison's been tattooing a lot longer than me, and there were a bunch of Guy Bedron and Dirk Morrison was tattooing before me. There are a bunch of people who are still relevant now. Bob Tyrell I think was before me, so I just didn't know any of those people. I just saw people at the local shop and was like, oh, these guys can't draw, so I should give it a shot.
Before we started recording, I asked you where you were. You're out of Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah. So, what was there a lot of tattoo shops in that area?
No, not really. We have one guy that a lot of people who've been around for a long time nationally would know, named Billy Naylor, and he owned, I don't know, if there were 12 shops, 10 shops in the city, he probably owned 7 of them. Mm-hmm. And they would open and close and they would reopen under a different name. And they would, and they were kind of in, rougher areas, a lot of them. And he hosted a convention probably in 97, 98 here. And it was the only convention that I remember being hosted in Memphis for decades.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we just had one that Jake and Jess Ferris, that do the
Yeah.
Explorer Conference and all that. They
Yeah.
just hosted one here last spring, but before that, it had been decades, I think, since there had been a
Wow.
show here. But yeah, it wasn't there wasn't a lot of competition, not a lot of shops. There were a handful that had just been around for a long time. And no real art focused shops until a shop called Underground Art came along, and I tattooed at Underground Art for 15 years.
Oh, wow.
They opened just before I started tattooing, and they were the first kind of custom shop. They were doing conventions before anyone else I'd never heard of tattoo conventions, and they were traveling and doing the 5 national shows, each year, and they were having guest artists come through, and of course that was unheard of at that time too. And so when they hired me after some years of tattooing at a street shop, it felt like I was drafted into the NBA. I was just like, oh, I hit the big time. This is
This is
awesome.
great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Getting back so you were looking at getting tattooed, and as you were
Mhm.
getting tattooed and going, wow, I could do this. What was the lead up before that? Like, what was your life before?
I drew. I was just the best like artist in my class in high school. Like if there was a thing to be like painting the school mascot on the gym wall, and then I got the job. So I could just draw better than everyone else in high school, but it wasn't like I wasn't good. I didn't have any real training. I had an art teacher in high school that really took to me. She was great. Her name was Miss Nicholls, and she I lived in the art room. I went to a Catholic school, and
Yeah.
she was great about just like finding things for me to do to be in the art room instead of whatever class I was supposed to be in. And so like, and I wasn't a good student. And so she would like, I would help her with projects, for other classes. If I was in art 3 or art 4, I would help her with the art 1 classes. And so she just had been there so long that she kind of kept me in the art room. She entered my drawings in scholastic competitions. She encouraged me to do like summer art camps and things like that. I ended up going to Memphis College of Art, which is a private art school here in town. And she had me go into their, like entering their scholastic, like high school competitions that they would
Oh,
host
wow.
there. So I got I wasn't good, but I got like a feel for being a part of the art world at a young age. And then I ended up going to Memphis College of Art as a painting major.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you graduate?
No, tattooing took over. I made it 3 years, and
Same.
it really
Yeah, I dropped out after 3. My parents were so pissed. They were like, "You were
yeah.
almost there."
Yeah. Yeah, same here. Tattooing had started picking up enough that I was like drawing more and more for tattoos, and I just didn't see where the art degree was going to lead. I just couldn't figure out what I was going to do with it. I thought originally I would tattoo until I got an illustration gig or a graphic design gig. But a lot of my teachers in graphic design and illustration, they worked for local agencies. And so we would do like, field trips to see their studios and where they're working. And none of it looked like an insurance office. I would go in, I'd be like, oh, I want to work here. It's
Yeah.
like people are in cubicles. Nobody's doing anything, nobody was doing anything that looked cool to me. They were working in the earliest versions of like Photoshop and Illustrator, I guess, or Quark Express or one of those old kind of design programs, but they didn't look like you're looking at their screens and it looked like they were just working on computers. It didn't look cool.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't want to do this.
I've even heard from somebody who does a lot of the character designs and stuff for like Rick and Morty and stuff like that, like
Oh.
and an animation process. And she said it's not as glamorous as you think, man. Like we don't get invited to the parties. We're like the grunts, man.
Right.
Like the production team, like that's who is the like elite people and stuff.
Yeah.
She's like, we're
Yeah.
just the
Crazy.
little art nerds
Right.
that get
Yeah.
walled in to these office spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of we went when my wife and I first started dating in the later 90s, 98, 99, we went to um Disney World with her family, and we went to what I guess it was MGM. I forget, but where you could do like the artist tour, you could go and like
Hmm.
watch all of the animators work, but you're looking through a glass down, and they're in rooms, and it looked so cool. Did look cool. I was just like, they had like cells. They were still hand drawing, the cells and doing overlays and everything, and these big long art tables, and I was just like, oh my God, I want to be a Disney artist. That looks freaking awesome. But the person who was doing the tour for us was like, I've been drawing Aladdin or one character from Aladdin for like 3 straight years. And I'm like fourth in line to actually draw Aladdin if we do another Aladdin. Like
Yeah.
there's no chance. It would take a perfect storm of unfortunate events for me to end up as the person drawing this character. And I was
Well,
like,
not only
oh,
that, but you're so locked into Disney at that point too. My
yeah,
mom was really pressuring me to like, she's like, you should work for Disney. And I was like, with you. I was like, when I got into illustration, because that's what I studied
hmm,
in college, I realized that you had to fall in love with your characters and you had to be willing to draw them a lot.
yeah, yeah.
And I was a one act, person. I was like, I just want to do one piece and be done. And so I
Right.
was like, this probably not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, yeah. When you think of it that way, you're like, oh man, drawing a character for so long and really being a great chance that you will never actually see your character on screen or never get credit for it.
Right.
It's like someone else's version of that character anyways that you're like mimicking or something. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that's a good perspective. Honestly, give people a lot of background on that. And it's good because it's highly competitive. And so,
mhm,
you know, that's
yeah,
that's what it takes to be in those kind of competitive situations like that. So you
yeah,
just got to really want it.
right.
What did it look like when did you ask for an apprenticeship? Were you offered one?
I asked, well, in a roundabout way, I went to this shop that I ended up apprenticing at. It was called Dragon Master, and it was at I guess most cities have like a car dealership row, like, where you just like drive down the street and it's like 100 car dealerships down the street. I don't know if that's true, but we have
I
one. It's
live
called
on
Company.
one.
Oh,
No.
do you? Okay.
Yeah.
This tattoo shop's like tucked in between 25 car dealerships
Oh,
and
wow.
in a little strip shop center, and like next to a Mexican restaurant and a little bar. The bar is actually still there called Partners, but nothing else from there is still around from 1996. And I went with a girl I was dating at the time and her best friend, and her best friend was getting her eyebrow pierced. And while we were waiting to get her eyebrow pierced, I was just talking to what I thought was the front desk person about tattooing. And I was like, yeah, I've been interested in that. I just got my first tattoo recently and I've been thinking about doing it. And it turns out he was the owner. And he was like, well, we're looking for apprentices. If you can come back in like Monday before we open, I'll put you through the test. And I was like, the test? And he's like,
Got to hold
yeah,
a
I bet.
snake.
Right. Yeah. And so that was it. It was like I just kind of expressed interest. And he was like, well, can you draw? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, come in on Monday. And so I came in and he had me draw a winking skull. And his his thought was like, if you can, I forget exactly how he described it. He's like, but if you can make a skull look like it's winking, like if you can take bone and give it like animate it and make it look believable, then you can draw anything. And I'm like, really? All right. I don't know if I agree with that, but sure. So I, so I sat down with like a piece of printer paper and a number two pencil. I drew a winking skull and I drew like a scar through it. And I put a bandana on it. I tricked it out in every way that I thought this dude would love. And he did. It worked, man. He was like he was taking it around the shop, showing it to people. And so he was like, well, yeah, you start this week. And so I did. I didn't get much out of it. I was really, we ran a shuttle, which was a Mitsubishi Eclipse, to the Navy base, which is about 30, 45 minutes away and back. So someone would go pick up a bunch of Navy kids and
Oh,
then bring them back to the shop, and they would like drink at Partners at the bar next door until it was time for them to get tattooed. And they put me driving that shuttle. So my apprenticeship, what really had very little to do with like tattooing for the first at least 3 months. I was just driving that stupid Mitsubishi Eclipse 30 minutes, like an hour back and forth, 3 or 4 times a day. And so that kind of sucked. I didn't really learn anything about tattooing. But that was the start of the apprenticeship. My graduation from that was the shop manager. His name was Mr. Bill. He tattooed with his tongue out of the side of his mouth. He's a big, big guy. Kind of looked like Captain Lou Albano, if you get for any wrestling fans. And he you would wipe for him. They'd be like, all right, you're wiping for Mr. Bill today. So if you can imagine as a tattooer, like you're tattooing and you're depending on someone else to wipe in between, like I can't think of a more annoying than some apprentice in my way trying to wipe the ink or blood off of the tattoo. But that's how they kind of taught, and you would wipe for Mr. Bill. And And so I graduated to wiping for Mr. Bill a little bit. And then for the most part, ended up making slight changes to Flash. I did learn to meet with customers because there was nothing custom there. So it was like you would change a name in a banner, or you would like switch out a roaring lion for a still lion and a Leo photo, or there's Flash. So you were basically just, tracing different pieces of Flash together, or maybe, doing some drawing, but not a lot. But that was kind of the evolution of it. I never really learned to tattoo there.
It's a kind of weird test for something that was so not needing of those skills,
Yeah. Yeah.
He should have taken you out and been like, let me drive with you for like a half hour.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Do you use a turn signal well? Or
you know about the Navy.
Right. Yeah. That would have been a much better test for what I
get any
actually
specialty coins while you were in that kind of position.
Right.
What? That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, so did you, okay. So what happened? So what happened after that?
I didn't make it, I made it, I got an apprenticeship license. And in Tennessee, you have to tattoo under a licensed artist for a year to get an artist license. Okay. I didn't make it a year there because it was just, I just wasn't getting much out of it. I was working a regular job during the day at that point, construction, and then doing that at night. And it was a lot. And so I ended up saving up some money. I learned kind of the basics. I saved up some money and I bought a used autoclave, and I just started tattooing out of my house. And so I did that, I don't know, probably 2 years, I would think. I had just an extra room in my house that was all linoleum and wood paneling walls. It was fairly it was as sterile as a room could be, I guess, at your house. And so I never had like an ultrasonic or anything like that. I just had an autoclave. So I would like scrub needles, really well, and tubes, and it was before there was nothing disposable, obviously, at that point. It was all, stainless steel. And I just kind of like figured it out as I went. I got real lucky. The advice I always give to people that want to get into tattooing is to get tattooed by the people that you look up to. I started getting tattooed by my favorite artist at Underground Art, the shop that I mentioned earlier, that was the custom shop. And his name was David Evans. And if you watch any early Fireside stuff, he was my co-host for the first 100 episodes. So I reached out to him and he started a half sleeve on me. And I told him I was tattooing out of my house. And he would let me bring photos in. I'd be like, what happened here? Why didn't this work? Or why is that going to heal okay? And he was great. I mean, these aren't great photos. It's not like camera photos today. Yeah. It's like the best I could do at the time. And, my machine would fall out of tune. I wouldn't know what to do with it. And he would try to help me tune it, or at least show me how it, what to, like, an order of operations if it starts missing, or where he's like, well, it'll build up carbon here on this point. Just take this little piece of sandpaper with you and do this. So he was just super helpful. He's just a great dude. And so he helped me a lot, and didn't really complain too much. I told him that I had an autoclave, and then I was trying to be, I was as sterile as I, could be. And so a year or so went by, and he tattooed me, and we got along well. And then one day there was a message on my answering machine from Angela, the woman who owns Underground Art still today. And she was like, hey, we just had an opening come up. Would you have any interest in coming down and applying for it? And so I was like, yeah. So I got all my stuff, came down, and essentially they looked at my tattoos and were like, you're really just going to have to do another apprenticeship. We won't call it an apprenticeship because you've already been through it, but you're just going to have to do this all again. Yeah. I was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm good. So
same. I mean, it's not the same, but I did too as well.
Yeah.
So what was involved in your second one?
It was a lot better. It was more like, apprenticeship by committee a little more. So there were some solid artists there, people who could draw, and people who loved to draw. That was the thing at the first shop. It was a job for people. They did, pick Flash off the walls, and some of them could tattoo it okay, but you didn't see people sitting around with sketchbooks all that much. And Underground was different. The drawing room was always being used. People were always drawing. And so it was they would finish a tattoo, go straight back to the back room and start drawing something else. And so just being immersed in that was really helpful. And, I like everybody, I think that I came in feeling like I should know more than I do, because I came in as like a licensed artist. I'd already been through an apprenticeship. I had a bunch of tattoos under my belt that I've been doing for my house. And so I wanted to come in and then be like, oh, Jake's going to be a good contributor to to our environment. He's going to be, but I wasn't, I wasn't good, but I didn't want to, you don't know what you don't know, but you're afraid to like speak up about it. So when things weren't going right for me, I think that people would have bent over backwards to help me, but I just had this like attitude where I would like I was like, I should already know this. I don't want to ask, and so I shot myself in the foot for a long time by like pretending that I was, that I knew what I was doing when I didn't. But even still, I got a lot of help. They would be great about, I would try a style. I remember doing my first portrait of someone's daughter, and it was terrible. And so the portrait goes out the door. The person's fine with it. There was nothing to compare it to back in that day. They thought it was great. And at the end of the night, Angela, who owns the shop, who doesn't tattoo, just takes me aside, and she was like, I appreciate like your ambition, but I think maybe not portraits right now. Like, just hold off on that, and we'll see if we can like work towards it. If that's what you want to do, we'll figure out a way to work towards it. And so it was that type of, apprenticeship where it was just like kind of keeping me in my lane a little bit.
Pardon this interruption, diary listeners, but I have to shout out Paradise Tattoo Gathering. You can find more about this show at tattoogathering.com. There you can find your artist pass, your collector's passes. You can find more about where to book if you want to stay in the area. Jiminy Peak Mountain Resort. It's an epic venue. Just gorgeous. The leaves are changing. It's all the things that October is supposed to be. Plus, it's backing right up to Halloween. So there's going to be a lot of neat Halloweeny vibes. It's just a great show. It always draws in a epic cast of artists, presenters. Seminars are given that are life-changing. It's sponsored by some of the greatest people that I can imagine. Just really OG people in the field of tattooing. The networking is beyond. And then I also want to take the time to reiterate at this moment, the recording I did for our scholarship. I'm going to let you guys digest that. And then after, we can get back to Jake. Did you know that Paradise Tattoo Gathering has a scholarship fund for aspiring tattoo artists? Well, I'm here to tell you it does. This program aims to provide opportunities for those who may not be able to afford to attend the event. As Derek Youngberg of Tattoo Career Builders put it, this scholarship opportunity is for somebody who can't afford to get there. It's not just about the education, it's about the networking platform they will find when they get there. My name is Amy Nicholls, and as a tattoo artist of 16 years, I can say that Paradise has been a critical part of my life as a professional. Paradise gatherings reinvigorate and offer a space for artists who feel they have plateaued in their careers. As I said on the Fireside podcast, I feel like Paradise can give you new wings. It can connect you with people that can reinvigorate your business model and talent. This scholarship is part of the work that events like Paradise are about. It offers another example of community and giving back. Paradise has always been a place where all have been welcome under the common dedication to excellence in tattooing. This scholarship aims to expand the Paradise mission to educate, support, and connect artists. You can play a part in supporting the future with a donation to the scholarship fund. Your contribution will be matched up to $10,000 by Coalition Tattoo Supply and Tattoo Career Builders, doubling the impact of your generosity. You can also nominate an artist to receive a scholarship or be considered for one. Whether you want to donate, nominate, or apply, please go to this web address, https://paradise-tattoogathering.com/paradise-scholarship. And as always, we look forward to seeing you in Paradise. Well, I mean, you're a likable person, so I think that's probably why. Yeah, I mean, that's been my experience of you. That's probably why they called you and was like, this guy, that was something when we, at my former studio, we always like wanted to hang out with a potential prospect first to just see if we could tolerate them as a
Yeah.
person. And clearly you are a person that they enjoyed being around. So
I
that's
think
huge.
that's yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. We had some great guest artists come through that probably like from an artistic standpoint would have been great assets. Like they would have brought in business to the shop, but just the egos would get in the way a lot, and especially at that point in time, Angela was and is unique. Is a special person in that she not only was the only one, there was one other woman in Memphis that owned a shop, Mouse's, and Mouse has been around for since the early 80s, I think. And she's 70 something now, probably. Angela opened underground art with her art friends, not with a bunch of tattooers. And they just decided, like, we're going to do awesome tattoos because we can all draw. And she just took it, she was a custom shop before we knew the term.
Wow.
And so, uh, yeah, so that I think because of that took me a little bit in a different direction than I was intending to go. But she was a unique person. That she was a woman that not only started a shop but started a custom shop that instantly started winning Best of Memphis with all of our Memphis polls and stuff like that. And so biker dudes just didn't like her, and a lot of other great tattooers that came through didn't like. I don't know if they didn't like her. They just weren't ready to be told what to do or be given a schedule by a woman, I think. Especially she's like strong-willed, and and so we had a lot of like great artists come through, but within a couple of weeks, it was just very clear, like, oh man, they're butting heads constantly. It's just not going to work. And so I think that's pretty common when you have someone with a really great skill set, they end up bringing their ego along with them. So for me, being a mediocre artist and a mediocre tattooer, but a nice guy, I think took me a long way.
Yep. Uh, my mom's a big proponent of Zig Ziglar's. It is your attitude, not your aptitude, that determines your altitude.
Oh yeah, yeah. Good. Good. I
And
like that.
it's a good one.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I found that too. I started later than you for my second apprenticeship, and I found a lot of it wasn't. I mean, I don't know. It could have been that I was a woman. I'm not sure. Nobody. I
Yeah.
got some innuendos of like that in my experience, which I found very odd. But I wasn't running the show, so it wasn't like that. It was more so like this art kid like attitude thing. Like, and it was weird because it was like reverse. Like
Mm.
they kind of saw me as like having more of an ego
Hmm.
and that I was all polished and hoity-toity and don't come in here with your fancy like college knowledge and like I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
what is happening? Like,
Huh. Yeah.
why is this attitude happening? And I would have drawn or helped show anything to anyone, like your mentor, I would have,
Hmm.
if you'd asked me anything about I knew, I would have given it to you,
Sure.
free of
Yeah.
charge. So, and
Yeah.
that's been my experience. And maybe that was kind of the vibe too, is that like,
Hmm.
um, the tattoo culture kind of clashing with that art world culture. Cause the early 2000s were like the renaissance, I feel, of like tattooing and
Yeah.
invention and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so you tattooed there for 50. Well, did you
Yeah.
learn? Let's start first. What was your first tattoo machine? Do you remember?
Yeah. My first one was from it was the Mad Max from what were they called? Precision Tattoo Supply. It
Mhm.
was like I bought it was a kit. Well, I didn't buy the tattoo kit. I bought a kit that included like a couple of tubes and four inks and a machine. You could buy like National Tattoo, I know for sure. Maybe Precision did as well, but they would sell like tattoo kits that you would assemble. I bought one of those a couple of years later, thinking like, oh, I want to build my own, but there just wasn't enough information out there for you to do it right. But yeah, my first one was called the Mad Max, and then I wish I still had it, but I don't know if you remember Danny Fowler of Time Machine. So Time Machine was doing some really crazy stuff with their machines back in the day, and they offered in the year 2000. They did a G 2000. The machine looked like a big G, and it had 2000 stamped in it. And they would give you $100 credit towards that machine if you sent in any other machine. And I sent them my Mad Max. I don't know why. I just wanted
Oh,
that. And now I look back and I'm like, man, I just gave that thing my first machine. I gave it away for $100. That was silly. because I'd
What,
love
you
to still
didn't know?
have it. Well, yeah, I didn't know. I was just like, I just wanted something new and cool.
Yeah. Well, and
But
that's
yeah,
odd too, because a lot of places now, like if a machine's been used, they don't
yeah,
they don't want
yeah.
anything to do with it because they don't
Yeah, I don't
know.
even. Yeah, I'd be curious what they were. I think Danny Fowler died a couple of years ago, fairly recently, but I wonder what they
Oh,
were doing with those
yeah.
machines that they took in for $100 each.
Yeah, I
They probably
wonder.
they probably ended up with some cool ones that people just didn't know any better, where they were like, "Oh wow, like this is a collector's, and I'm giving away I'm trading them one of my new machines, and I'm making a thousand of it."
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Good,
but
good strategy, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah.
probably so. The
Interesting.
time machine was cool in that they were well, in theory was cool. They had, instead of having like specific points, like where your like say where your the set screw where your armature bar would
Hmm.
sit, instead of that being a single hole drilled in the frame that held that armature bar in one place, it was slotted, so you could move your armature bar up and down and your contact screw from all different
Oh,
directions. The idea was like, oh, you can set this up to be completely your own. It could be a liner or a shader. Every point was slotted rather than just like a hole drilled in the frame. So you could like move it. You could move the coils up and down. You could move everything around, which
huh.
I thought was going to be really cool. But actually, it's terrible for people who don't want to like screw with machines all the time. And
Yeah.
so I can never like get them right. I was actually talking with Soba, BJ Johnson, about this
Hmm.
last year before the Paradise Gathering, and he was like, "Yeah, everyone had that problem. Like, it seemed like such a cool idea, but no one could keep them in tune, because they were constantly vibrating out or somewhere
Yes.
else into the slot."
Yes. Yeah, man. No, totally. It is a interesting thing in theory.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like messing with machines. So that was kind of my hiccup in the beginning. I was just like, really? I
Yeah.
gotta carry around an emery board just to run this fucker. There's
Right.
carbon buildup. What is this madness? Like that stuff didn't compute to me because in the art realm it's so tactile.
Mhm.
Like you can burn a piece of wood and draw with it,
Yeah.
and like it's
Yeah.
like you don't really have to. It's caveman shit. Like you can use your
Yeah.
fingers.
Yeah.
So whenever it comes to the mechanics for me, I'm like,
I, I'm
you
with
think
you.
I'm not, but I hated
I
it.
want, yeah, I want everything to work the same way every time I pick it up. And that was the problem,
Yes.
with,
Yeah.
excuse me, with coils. That was the problem was, uh, it would behave differently from one day to the next,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh God, I'm lining a scroll piece today, and I can't get the thing to, like, every time I turn it at this angle, it bogs down and won't,
Yeah.
it hangs up or,
And I've even heard some like in deep conversations about it where like they discuss like the magnetism, like your own personal
I've heard talks
magnetic
about that too.
force
Yeah.
will cause the
Will,
machine to
like,
not work.
affect
So
the
if you just let it
machine.
sit for a minute and don't
Yeah.
use it, it works fine the next. I'm like, what?
I want to say Carson Hill and I had that discussion
Yeah.
once on the podcast about that was his kind of, he threw that out there like, oh, and it's all like electromagnetism and we're all, magnetic in a way. And he was really ahead of his time in the evolution of tattoo machines. I credit him a lot with just all of he didn't. I mean, the Numa that he built, Numa 1, Numa 2, those were
Mm-hmm.
pneumatic machines. They were air powered, but they did get people. And while people don't use those anymore, they did get people thinking about an alternative to coil machines. And I
Yes.
don't know that we would have ever seen the rotary resurgence if he hadn't done that, in
Yeah.
2002 or three or whatever.
Oh, I remember I got his hybrid and
Mhm.
it was stupid because it was a hybrid, but it was not meant to be run on a power supply. It
Oh
was
yeah,
meant to be run on an air compressor.
yeah.
And so it was only like if you traveled to a convention, you didn't want to bring your air compressor,
Mhm.
obviously,
Right.
that you would run it off a power supply. Well, that was not in the fine print, I guess. So,
Yeah.
so it kept breaking.
Uh,
And it's kind of sucked for me because in my second apprenticeship, that was the one I was referred to buy. And
uh,
I couldn't run
Couldn't use
it
it.
really. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was like, dude, this is my only machine. But yeah, I remember, and yeah, and he makes brilliant machines now. Like it's
Yeah. Yeah, that's my daily driver now is
mhm.
the latest, the Numa, not the latest one. I do have it. I still use the one before it the most, the Numa macro is what he calls it. It's a Numa 4 macro. I've got the Numa 5. That's super cool. I just, I'm just still used to, you use something, you just keep using it. So I want to use the new version, but I just know the old version, how it works so well, and I just keep using it.
I have to try them out. I have to say that was something that kind of ran me off, but a lot of tattoo artists that I know use them,
Mhm,
and they're wonderful. At that point, after that, I think Cheyenne was coming out with stuff,
mhm.
and that's
Yeah.
who I'd stuck with for a long time. But now
Yeah.
there's so many options, and they're all really, really good.
Yeah. Nobody's, man. I mean, like you can buy, I mean, I don't recommend it, but you can go buy a $70 one off of Amazon and tattoo just fine with it.
I tattoo my
Uh,
eyebrows with one of those jobbers. I keep it at home, and I just need to
oh,
touch up every once in a while. My boyfriend comes
oh,
in, he's like, "Are you
wow.
tattooing your face yourself?" I'm like, "Yeah, man, I do this shit all the time."
Oh, wow.
He was
Man, bold.
like,
I guess if I mean,
"Yeah."
you spent your life doing like, I guess like brushing.
I mean, I put
Uh,
on my makeup every day. I'm
uh,
like, I'm probably the best person to do this.
yeah. Yeah. Da David Evans, the guy that was my mentor, that was my host my co-host for so long. This would be like late 90s, early 2000s. He was tattooing. I'd never heard of cosmetic tattooing. He was tattooing eyebrows, with a coil, and was like, he would have the person go in and like use the tone
Yeah,
or whatever that they want, like their own pencil, draw it in, basically make their own stencil for him, and then lie down, and he would just match it with,
that's
brown and white,
awesome.
and like just brush it in. He's like, yeah, we may have to do it again in a while. And I just remember thinking like, oh, you are so bold to tattoo somebody's face. But yeah, he was doing that stuff 25 years ago. It's
That's
crazy.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, man. If it's myself, it's fine. There's a lot of cosmetic things just in general like that. Like now they're doing a lot of like they put stem cells on your face and then run like a tattoo machine all over your face and basically
Uh,
create like mid-level trauma. And then the gel that they put on it, mixed with your body's own collagen production helps like smooth out any kind of fine lines and
hmm,
wrinkles and creates lift and all this crap that
huh.
people run away from aging.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
hope that my lines come from smiling personally.
Same here.
You know, um,
Me too.
yeah.
I don't.
What was your first tattoo?
My first tattoo was the green eggs and ham. Like the little dude holding the I am Sam. He's got the green eggs and ham in one, and he's got a
Oh,
sign that says I am Sam. It was on my lower thigh. That was my first tattoo. I had a
okay.
t-shirt, with it, and I brought the t-shirt in, and they photocopied the t-shirt and did the tattoo and butchered it like the greens. And I didn't understand why everything did fine, but there's green in the sign, and there's green in the ham and in the yolk of the eggs, and everything healed fine. The greens all scabbed up and fell out, and I was like, God, I must have I had a reaction to the green. And then I realized when I started tattooing not long after, it's like if you don't know what you're doing, like you can, especially old greens, like back in the day, like if you're trying to get like a lime green, it never looks solid in the skin, so you just keep trying to push it in the skin. Yellows and greens were like that. And this guy had been tattooing a long time, but he just wasn't. He just completely overworked the skin.
Yeah.
Wasn't competent enough to do it. But yeah, I had it's only recently been covered. Andy Chambers and it has covered it with a big. Andy's doing
Oh,
my like a neck to. It's supposed to be a neck to knee back piece on me, but it's made its way down to my ankle on one leg, and so we ended up covering the green eggs and ham
green
just
eggs
because
and
of
ham. That's pretty
yeah,
dope. That's
yeah.
pretty dope.
What was your first one?
My first one was on my back. It's like a dinner plate size.
Oh
And I was
wow.
like, um, I've done the faux pas of having three different artists finish it.
Gotcha.
So I got it lined, and that was
Yeah.
my first mentor. And then that situation didn't work out. And so I came here to Maryland and it was not well lined at all. And so then the guy that I approached, he's still tattooing. He's in Annapolis. He's a really good traditional tattoo artist. But that's not the style I work in. So I had him reline it. And when he started talking about the colors that he wanted to use, I was like,
Yeah.
no, no. Like I like him. His name's Joe.
Mm.
But I was like, it's not gonna work. And
Yeah.
then I had another traditional artist actually finish it, which is interesting. But he did a great job. I mean, it's a good first tattoo. I've
Yeah.
waffled between the idea of covering it, and I don't think I can. I think
Yeah.
it's I think it's too much a part of my history, and I think it's appropriate because the idea came from a dream. I dreamt of 7 snakes eating each other in a circle, and it was really weird. And I read a lot of things like Joseph Campbell and story creation and symbolism. And so for me, that was like, ooh, that's a very deep, symbolically rich thing. But it's all about like, I've read, and I think it's in the Bible too, that you fall 7 times before you reach some kind of grace or like understanding, but it's about like falling and then getting back up again. And so for me, like the 7 was a very pivotal number. Plus it's a huge number of completion. So for me, it's like my life journey. And it's kind of interesting that there was 3 people, 7 snakes, and it's not great. Like that's my life.
Right.
So far, it's very on par.
Wow. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I've thought about like, maybe blasting something that kind of goes through it or something, like not anything that would just having it be there and just like, hey, it is what it is. I'm very honest about like, that's a big thing about me. I really try to be, if I'm a fool, I'm an honest fool. Yeah. And that's a big thing I try for. Yeah. What about when did they let you start tattooing? Like how long were you an apprentice before? Like I know you had been tattooing and then you had an apprenticeship and then you started another one. So how did that look?
The second one, since I was already tattooing, I could tattoo with me. I tattooed first day. But it was essentially, they weren't necessarily saying like, you're going to have to redo your apprenticeship, but just like you learned a lot of things wrong or didn't learn them at all. You're kind of you're going to have to unlearn a lot. And, but they did that just through, guidance and letting me fumble my way through a little bit, but then, helping. A lot of it was helping with just making things, not setting yourself up for failure. I talk a lot on our show about things being tattooable, like what makes something tattooable or not tattooable. And I drew a lot of non-tattooable stuff, and it was an era where it was like, it would make you kind of proud to be able to noodle in very tiny, like hidden things within things and all of that. It was just, that's kind of what the 90s were in tattooing, was a lot of little stuff. So I like went deep into that. I was just trying to do a lot of noodly little things,
Cherry Creek Flash, Cherry Creek Flash, everything. Like these roses were like this big, like they were an inch tall.
Yeah. And you wanted every petal to like have a blend from, pink to red to whatever, like just trying to like noodle everything to death. Yeah. So I learned a lot about just like setting myself up from a drawing standpoint, for success. I learned, they taught me about using, negative space to avoid the parts you don't want to tattoo, like how to like not tattoo an elbow without making it look like you didn't want to tattoo the elbow or the armpit. So that, a lot of, I guess you would call it, I mean, in some ways it seems maybe more advanced ideas, but really basic ideas. That everyone
those are the things you don't think about though.
Yeah.
Like that's really a next level even for your client, because they don't think about it either. I can't tell you the number of times that people show me a picture and it's a tattoo and it's very contained, but it's like very close on the forearm, for example. And I'm like, well, what is that going to look like if you pan out, like, and you stand over across the room? Are you going to know what the hell that was? Yeah. And they go, oh, I'm like, yeah, that's a beautiful photo. Do you want people at the Walmart to be that close to you?
Right.
They're like, oh, that's a good point. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. People don't think about it that way, but it's important. Yeah, it's important too for, for longevity. And so that was, I got a lot of help from David and from some of the other folks there that, that kind of helped along those lines, like, overshooting the space, drawing bigger than you think you should, or, using negative space.
I still got to work on that. I mean, those are still challenges to this day of mine. Yeah. All right, diary listeners, that is the first half of Jake's diary entry. We'll have the second piece next week. Please touch back. It's a great tale. I'm pretty blessed and grateful that I got the opportunity to get the skinny here and this time with Jake. He gave me a lot of his time. I know he's a very busy man. So I'm very grateful, Jake. You can follow Jake at Plug Ugly Art. I don't know why he calls it that, but I guess it's ironic, and it's definitely humble. And I definitely felt that about much of what Jake has relayed to us thus far is a sense of humility about himself, his experience. So that's greatly appreciated, and I think that's a wonderful thing to guide us as we move into this week. Hopefully, each of us can use what we had from this podcast and what we listened to and incorporate it into what we're about to do. I wish you all a powerful week. God bless, and good day.
Thanks for listening. You can find the Apprenticeship Diaries on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Our IG is _apprenticeship_diaries. If you would like to offer constructive criticism or an interview, drop us an email at theapprenticeshipdiaries@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from our listeners.